laptop.
Yeah, that was bad. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm just saying hello in YouTube chat. If you are watching live, we are looking at YouTube chat for questions. Let me go ahead and pop out that window. All right. And so today I am on the road. The last time I tried to do a show from the road, my laptop died. I have a new laptop now, so hopefully that won't be the case this time. I'd hate to keep losing them every time I travel. So with that, I don't have a slide deck prepared. We're just going to talk about some stories, and if people have topics or questions, we'll just do that. And last week, Carolyn had all the technical difficulties, so I'd like to start with Carolyn this week. Carolyn, what's new with the podcast?
That was funny. New with the podcast?
Yep.
I think I'm really enjoying this mobile first indexing test way more than I thought I would. And I thought I would enjoy it. But I think I'm going to share a little more about that because that seems to be pretty fun.
Can you give us a bit of a spoiler?
Well,
Or a teaser.
yeah. Well, let's just say having, the two sets of files, the mobile version for a domain and a desktop version for a domain, that by messing with the mobile files, some keywords that, I wasn't sweating trying to target them because I was like, well, he's not paying me that much. But by doing that, using that keyword and optimizing for that keyword, it jumped up 20 spots to start. And now it's up, 29. So it added another 9 spots to it. So now it's on the very bottom of page. It's volatile a little bit. Top of page 3, bottom of page 2. So I think I'm going to do like what Clint recommends and just do the on page until it no longer works. So I haven't hit the ceiling yet, I think, on this. So that's where I'm excited.
Yeah, historically, I've often hit the ceiling at like somewhere between result 20 and result 30, and then I have to go and look at off page before I can continue the climb. So I know that Clint often will jump to page 1 to start, but I rarely get so lucky. I usually have to claw and scrape up into 20 to 30, then do off page and then resume the climb to top of page 1. But diagnostically, like when I look at problems with indexing, I often look at, how do we appear? How are we findable in desktop versus how are we findable in mobile? Because they aren't always the same. They often are the same, but they aren't always the same. And I find that is a diagnostic clue as to what might be going wrong. And I know that lately with the work you're doing, Carolyn, that you seem to be detecting Google updates by looking at Google bots and updates to Google bots. And so I'm having a lot of fun just following what you're doing because everybody knows I dabble in update detection, and I did a pretty good job for a while until my method stopped working. But I like what you're doing, and to me, it kind of smacks of a new update detection method by looking at updates to Googlebot. Do you feel that's got some merit?
I have a small, what is it? A small data set, right? This last update. And I would say, I think, you inspired me with the weather tool. And so I was thinking, well, if something's changed, I mean, if something's getting updated, it has to change somewhere. So
Yeah. And typically there's only 3 or 4 big ones. Like they have a constant like flux of like little changes and updates and stuff. But there's generally only 3 or 4 big ones a year. So it's not like you get a lot of chances to make it happen. But from what we can see, it looks like, when Carolyn says, "Oh, things are happening," and then Google in proximity does something big, that catches my interest. And so I know it's not the best sample set, but it's very reminiscent to the intuition and the results that I was getting detecting updates. So I'm very interested in what you're doing.
thanks.
So yeah, check that out, everyone. How can people find your podcast?
Pretty much everywhere there are podcasts, or you can just Google Confessions of an SEO. And it's after the update, man, it really took over page 1. So yay, update.
Yeah, and if you happen to find the video Confessions of a Black Hat SEO, it's absolutely hilarious. I think that video, while it's not Carolyn Holzman, it's absolutely funny, and it kind of describes white hat SEO more than black hat SEO. So if you need a good laugh and you stumble across that, just know it's different. And with that, Clint, any news on the inevitable return of SEO this week, or is it not inevitable?
Not yet. I'm almost done making the SOPs and the videos, and then things will settle down for me a little bit more in my other role, hopefully, at least for a little while. And then we'll see about bringing everything back.
Well, when you do, let me know, and we'll make some big splashes about it.
Cool. Appreciate you.
All right. So normally I would switch over to a slide, but instead we're going to talk about the news until we get some questions going. So the first news thing I want to talk about is this, this calming down or backing off of John Mueller and his SEO office hours. And I think it's actually a good thing that he's calming down on that. I know that he talks a lot about how Google works, and I think that aspect of what he's doing is a real community service. And I wish they would package it as talking about how Google works. I think the part where it runs off the rails is when they package it as SEO advice, because it's not that. And they're not actually out there helping you rank. They might help you with, problems with your website, technical issues and interactions with search, but those aren't really SEO advice. Like SEOs help you rank better. And if they fail to help you rank better, they get fired. SEOs directly help you with rankings. Google does not help you rank better. It's not what they do. There is no consequence if they suck at helping you rank better. And so when Google passes off their information about how search works as SEO advice, I think it's a big disservice. And so I always had a problem, not with what they were delivering, but with how they were packaging it. And so I'm kind of glad that they're stepping back from, being an SEO advice source, doing that with less frequency, I think is a good thing. I do like when they share how search works, and I like it best when they package it as how search works. And so their off the record podcast and their Google I/O videos, I think those are all really great. But when they come out with, here's SEO advice, I think they tend to do a really poor job of SEO advice. What do you think, Clint?
I mean, I consider those as they are what they are, right? And they put out so much other content. Like the podcast, I listen to that way more than the office hours anyway, because the old format where people can come in, it was the English office hours, but you could not understand when any of the questions were asked. And then they were just beating dead horses, and you could tell John was getting frustrated, and then the information was coming out was just garbage anyway, because the questions were bad. So the answers were bad. I like the podcast with Gary Martin and John in there, and having conversations, and they're not giving away SEO ideas, but they're certainly inspiring a lot of test ideas in regards to what could be happening with the SEO stuff in there. And to me, I think those formats are better than it for specifically for Google. I mean, it's a worldwide market. So doing a Q&A, I mean, it just turns into garbage. You can't even listen to it. I was trying to follow those along and do outlines for those, and God bless the people who could actually sit through an entire office hours and pull any useful information without wanting to stab themselves in the eye. So I like the new format. Come in there, get some common frequently asked questions that are jumped the whole month, and then just address that. And for us as people who are testing and investigating, we can look at it deeper and tell people who don't have the time to test that stuff whether it works or not, or they can just go in there and get some ideas and implement for their business. Some action is better than no action. So yeah, while it's not all of their things are not SEO perspective, they're webmaster, running your website perspective. I still don't discount their value.
Yeah, I don't discount their value, like in terms of explaining how they see search working and trying to explain that, and the webmaster interactions with how search works. I think all of that is like totally valid. It's when it's from a package of search engine optimization for the function of ranking better, like that's not what they're doing. And when they kind of label things that way, I think it's a disservice, because obviously Google can't play favorites. They're not going to help you rank number one for your keyword, because it would be, it would be disingenuous and favoritism against the other, 199 results that they offer for that keyword. And so the fact that they ever even like package it is like search engine optimization, it's really not what they're doing. It's not what they're good at. I don't think John Mueller's out there helping plumbers rank for their locations. They may have some basic advice to get your foot in the door, but as far as being competitive, I don't think they have a desire or a capability of being good at that. And it makes sense that they wouldn't. What do you think, Lee?
One of my things that I don't like in SEO groups is that people tend to ask the same questions over and over again. So if I were John Mueller, week after week getting asked, how many times should I use my keyword? Or, I've got 150 backlinks, they've got 151. Is that the reason they're outranking me? Rather than just search last week or the week before when it was asked 2, 3, 5 times. I can see where I'd want to cut down my office hours, because it's a repeat, of largely of every, previous week. So there are not a lot of new questions that come in unless there's an update. And then the questions tend to be, hey, what did this update target, which they're not going to tell you, or, during this update, my site fell 54 positions. Could it be because of X? Again, same questions, but those just occur, 3 times a year as opposed to every week.
Well,
and search professionals don't know how to use a damn search engine to get the answer to their question that people have been asking since search engines started. So
Well, in their defense, if you're Google and you're calling it an SEO office hour and you never give good answers to SEO questions, SEO answers to SEO questions, I don't think you have a right to expect those questions to keep coming back. If you never give a good SEO answer to an SEO question, then why are you calling it an SEO office hour? You know?
Have they called it SEO office hours? I thought it was always Google Webmaster office hours.
Well, in the article, and that might be a distinction there, in the article, they called it an SEO office hour. Let me pull that up.
No, yeah, you're right. SEO office hours.
You know, helpful or not, if you ask the question, you know, how many times should I use my keyword? And, you know, John continues to say, hey, I would just focus on writing good content for the user. Whatever the answer is over and over again, it gives the same one all the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, asking it every week, you know, is not going to break him down. So, okay, let me give you how the algorithm really works.
Well, I think it kind of goes to I have issues with the SEO community as clients. Like, they're lazy, they don't look anything up, they expect everything to be hand fed to them, and that kind of perpetuates that repeated over and over and over and over the same crap over and over. And I think we don't get it here when we do Q&As for SEO Fight Clubs, because they know that, well, one, I don't stand for that. I mean, seriously, we've answered that every week. Ted has talked until he's blue in the face about that thing every week. How do you not go back and watch the shows? Don't tell me, oh, I'm a great fan, but I'm a great fan, but I don't watch the shows or digest that information. It's that's the same with SEO stuff. You bought 50,000 courses to tell you how to write a title tag. Why are you asking title tag questions of John Mueller? And my guess is, if I was John Mueller, I'd be over it. I'd be like, boy, you people are dumb.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what John Mueller's failing to do is to say, I can't answer SEO questions, but I can talk about how search works. And that's the distinction he should make, is that's an SEO question, and I'm not great at answering SEO questions, but let me tell you my understanding of how search works, which he's totally qualified to answer. But what he's not qualified to answer is to help you beat your nearest competitor in the rankings. Like, and he should call that out. He should say, I can't help you with that SEO problem, because that's not what I do. Whereas the SEO you hire will be fired if he doesn't help you rank better. That is exactly what that SEO does day in and day out, is help you rank better.
Well, there are instances where John does help people, like John, but it's people that he knows and that have built this long-term relationship and ergo become his buddies, right? Then he'll go in and he'll look at websites. Bill Hartzer is good. He's got a relationship with John, and every once in a while, John will look at a website for him. So it's not, I don't necessarily know that he can't. I just think that kind of,
it's
like,
not his purpose.
To Lee's point, and probably my further follow on is, John just probably tired of baby and dumb people, and he's got so much, and he gets bashed for it, right? So he says what he can, but he can't say a lot for people like you, me, Lee, and Terry, and Carolyn, and Honey, to satisfy our curiosity about a thing, right? And then there's these other people that are just laid out, oh, you know, John's full of shit, blah, blah, blah. No matter what he says, he can be full of shit. That dude can tell you the exact workings of the algorithm today, and 90% of people will go, oh, no, he's full of shit, and not even look at it and test it. And so, I mean, if I was him, I'd be too old to deal with your crap. I'm going to give some videos and I'll answer some questions to keep the public relations part up in my role, but I'm going to do the fun stuff that I enjoy, like the podcast with the other two guys, because those guys seem to have fun during that stuff.
I'm still waiting for a large drop of things that he says that match empirical testing and observation. So when those things come into agreement, my eyes are going to go wide. And the thing is, though, you're right. There are people that are just kind of stubborn, lazy, set in their ways. But I'm not one of those people. I'm willing to look at the evidence. Like, I'm always willing to look. And I put on tinfoil hats all the time to see what I find. But I haven't seen that big honest drop out of Google. What we get are little tiny accidental bouts of honesty out of Google, and that sometimes happens. And that's why it's worth continuing to even try to look. But I don't think it's a case of he's blue in the face dropping honest knowledge bombs. Like, I don't think that's ever happened in any meaningful amount. But, that's my opinion. That's, I think what he's doing is he's speaking to how search works. He's not giving advice on rankings. He's never been particularly good at that. It might have accidentally happened with some of his close contacts. But his purpose for doing the SEO office hours isn't to help you optimize your rankings. I don't think that's an honest assessment of what he's been doing. I think he's been giving technical help to get you configured properly and findable, and things of those of that nature. And he gives you the common answer of, oh, well, you should focus on quality if you want to be a winner in search, and if you build it,
being devil's advocate, when giving someone, if Lee's got a website and there's a technical issue for it, and John goes, hey, you should go look and see about this. That sounds like it could be why you're going. And then Lee fixes it and his rankings go up. He's ergo gave advice. Well, honestly, I think
it's more of a cost of entry.
Ted's wrong.
You need to fix the 500 error your homepage is giving in order to play the game.
You and I both know there's more technical issues, URL structure, canonical setup. There could be display issues with the mobile. Those are all technical issues that affect ranking. So if John says, hey, you should go do that, then he is helping people rank their pages. He's not helping them become number one. And he's not, frankly, what I see you asking for is John to say, you do this and you will rank here. You do this and you will rank there. And that's what a lot of people are asking for. And he's not going to do it. I mean, he would probably get fired.
To Ted's point,
at the same. Oh, go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, I was going to say, to Ted's point, that's because they call it SEO office hours. If they're going to talk about it in terms of SEO office hours, they should actually have some helpful SEO advice. If they're just going to talk Google office hours, then, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, the thing is it's not SEO advice they're giving. It can be in a very vague sense, but they're not trying to help you win a good ranking. That's not their intent, is to help you win a good ranking. Their intent is to get you to the point where you can play the game.
They're helping you so that you can rank. Yeah, they're helping you so you can rank. And
I'm going to call it quick
how to be an SEO.
Because Terry's trying to say something and he's far too polite for Fight Club.
Go for it, Terry.
Well, in the spirit of Fight Club, Ted, your recommendation that he distinguish what he's going to talk about is wrong. That would diminish the numbers he gets for viewers, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to keep the viewers coming, even though a large percentage of them are coming to get SEO bombs, to get some little nuggets, even though he's not going to give away any. That doesn't stop them from showing up hoping to get some. And if he says, I'm just going to talk about how search works, but not about specific ranking stuff, his numbers will drop off, and they don't want that. They like those numbers.
That's okay, because switching from weekly to monthly is going to kill those numbers as well. and killing those numbers, I think, is okay because they've had it in the wrong packaging. What I don't want to see the Google I/O videos go away. I don't want to see the off the record podcast go away. And I don't want John Mueller to stop talking about how search works and helping people get into the game so that they can compete. I think all of those things are great public services. I think when Google packages it as SEO advice, that's the disservice, because that's not what it is. It's just simply different.
I disagree. If he's telling you how to fix a technical issue that could be slowing down your website or keeping it from ranking, that's SEO advice. That's all part of it, of optimizing for the website. Just because he's not saying, oh, this is how you get to top 10 or top 5, or this is how you win at search. I mean, if you put,
it's not even how you climb the ladder, though. It's not even how you climb the ladder.
Quora is absolutely useless unless you know how to put the data in those 2,000 factors that you analyze. That doesn't help me be a better SEO. That tells me to go look at these things that may help me rank higher. So Quora ergo is not an SEO tool. That's a webmaster's tool. So that's
well, the difference though is that Quora is going to give you a redux of 2,100 possibilities.
Yeah.
So starting with no information,
so
it's going to reduce it down to 2 or 3 dozen
John Mueller
likely
supposed
suspects.
to do anything different if Lee comes in with the website and says, "Hey, these are my issues." Because John Mueller says, "Try this one thing," where Quora is going, "Oh, try these 2,000 things."
Because Quora is going to come back and tell you that you need to use your pages more, and this thing called keyword density might be worth consideration.
Might be.
And John Mueller is going to tell you the exact opposite with no data.
It might be.
But for Google, SEO doesn't mean optimizing to rank better. It means optimizing to get in the search engine.
Yeah.
They don't want people thinking about trying to rank higher, even though we do. They want people to think about just getting into Google. And they want to change the conversation. They want SEO to mean getting prepared for a search engine, not for ranking.
Like Clint, you can give advice to help people rank their pages better. You could do it in your sleep. You're an expert at it. John Mueller and Google would absolutely say that everything you're doing is wrong and unnecessary. And you know that to be true.
And I'd be totally fine with that, because I could give Terry advice on a website and be completely wrong because I didn't analyze it, review it, and check it out. But if he came to an AMA for SIA and asked a question and I wasn't allowed to see that, the best that I can do is give the best advice based off of the description that he's giving me. Right. And I think that's the same with John. If they wanted him to take the time to actually look at websites and make recommendations and stuff like that, that would be a great show. But it would be just as much an SEO show as what he's doing now, but he's just doing it with less information and trying to essentially answer questions on the fly. He's doing, and it's no different than when we answer our audience questions on the fly. We get the description of it and we give our best guess of what might be going on.
Yeah, but it could be a web development show in that regard. This is how you do web development that works with search. It's a web development show at that point. It's technical about. It doesn't have to be. It could be a web development.
Well, if I have zero interest whatsoever in ranking in the search engines, and all I want to do is make a pretty JavaScript pure website that doesn't render for Google, then yeah, it's a web development show. But if I want to do a nice website, use JavaScript, and rank well in the search engines, and yeah, I'm going to have to pair that up. What can I do for the search engine that complements my web design and development, and what can I do in my web design and development that complements the search engines? It's putting that together. Web design, web development, and SEO, in my mind, and any Quora user that has ever looked at one of those reports can realize instantly that those three things are tied together. You cannot have good web design and not have good web development, or not have good SEO. All three of those elements all have to be there in order for you to be successful on Google or any other, unless you just don't care about search engines.
I think that the acronym SEO is the important part. I think the search engine optimization part that implies that you're climbing up the rankings based on your activities is the part. And if you're giving SEO advice, you're talking about advice that helps you climb the rankings. And I think where John Mueller stops is he'll get you in the game, but he's not going to help you climb the ladder.
He didn't
And
say
that's a
it was
very-
how high he was going to help you climb. He said, "Hey, now you're not in the now you're not in the top 100 because you fixed your mobile indexing stuff. Now you're not in the top 100. Now you're in the top 20 because you fixed your X, Y, or Z." He's not saying that. He's just saying, "Hey,
Well-
if you want to be competitive, then fix your mobile stuff. You want to be competitive." Make sure your page site loads faster in 10 seconds. You want to be competitive, do your title tags and stuff. If you want to be competitive, think about your H tags. They don't have to be all in this order, X, Y, Z. He's had different, tones of advice on that particular topic. He's not, and to me, it seems unreasonable for us to say, "John Mueller, I want you to tell me what I need to do to get in page 20. I want you to tell me I'm on page 20 now. I want you to tell me how to get to page 2." And he's going to tell you to pound sand. I would be much more entertained in that show if he actually told people that. Like, I'm not.
Well,
I'm going to throw this out there.
Go ahead, Lee. Go ahead.
As I said, I'm throw this out there. This looks like sweeps week because we've got a lot of battle going on. But now we have some questions from users, so I'm going to suggest we switch over to that because it looks like there's a few.
Fight Club. Let's go.
I want one last. one last bit.
Punch counter punch. I love it.
I want one last bit. I'd be inclined to agree with Clint if Google had the stance that, you should be gathering measurements, you should run experiments, you should follow the data, you should talk to people who are succeeding at it. If that was the line Google was towing, I'd agree with you, Clint. But they're going 100% against that. And that's why I disagree. And so if Google was telling people to use scientific method and to be empirical and to gather evidence, I'd switch over, but they're not doing that.
All right, now I'm going to make the controversial statement. I'm going to declare this battle a draw. Let's move on.
All right. Clint, I'll give you the last word on that because I didn't want to take the last statement.
I think it'd be unrealistic to expect Google to give empirical data and stuff because that empirical data leads to gaps and openings into their proprietary algorithm, which you and I both know it would be like our dreamland if we actually got it, but it's never going to happen. So,
true.
Until one of us learns how to hack the Google databases, we're kind of like all guessing anyway. But
true.
I mean, in regards to what they're doing now, I say good on John. Let's hear more about the Off the Record podcast where they get to talk a little bit more freely and toss around ideas and stuff and then take those ideas and turn them into great tests.
Yeah, and I absolutely think Google should tell us more about how search works. I just don't think it's, necessarily SEO advice.
Yeah.
All right, questions. All right. Let's see. Is there a company or person who I could hire to execute these tactics for my website? Quick answer, yes, there are many. I recommend you reach out to Clint. He's at digitalear.com. If you want to learn about these methods and tactics, I recommend you talk to Lee. He has testedseotraining.com. It's an amazing course. So those are two resources. I'll let you know that Clint is not cheap. He is one of the best of the industry. So if you want the best in the industry, you should come prepared to be professional about it. He's also not the most expensive either, but he's limited in resources. So don't expect to kick the tires with Clint. That's not going to work. All right. If you need a different recommendation, you can reach out to me. I refer people to talented SEOs all the time. But I usually try to start with Clint if you're a serious organization. Have you guys had a look at Corey Gerber's new case study? I don't know Corey personally. I have not seen his case study. Talking about Google author signals, that's not new. Google was experimenting with author signals back when Google Plus came out. That was a big push during that era. Do you believe Google can detect or use author? Yes, authors are entities. And if you are a recognized author in the entity database, I guarantee Google can pick up on that. And you can start to establish yourself as an author by using the schema and getting into places where that schema is used. I believe Clint probably knows a lot more about that. What do you think, Clint?
Yeah, I'd like to actually see this case study. If you can share a link with us, that would be awesome. But yeah, in line with if you think about entities and how Google's using those entities, or how we think Google's using those entities, it kind of goes in line that Google would be doing the same thing with people, right? So, and once they've established you as an entity in their systems and they start tying you into that stuff, I mean, you can easily turn that into author rank. So I think it's an interesting topic, and it's definitely something to look at and go after.
And the bylines and articles can manifest in the search result. There's like a presentation format for that information that can sometimes be triggered. And so doing the bylines in your blog posts can be important for that reason. How many advanced SEOs don't initially realize the immense value of Quora? Well, Quora is a tape measure. All right. So what Quora doesn't give you an easy button, it's a tape measure. It'll tell you that the table is 3 feet tall. Now, you might think that 3 feet tall is a bad height for a table. You might think it's a good height for a table. But Quora is going to give you the measurement fact that the table is 3 feet tall. And so Quora does that for a whole lot of factors. So you can find out exactly how your website is different than higher ranking websites based on those factor measurements. They're measurement facts. When Quora tells you you need to add 300 more keywords to your page, that's because higher ranking websites use it that many more times than you. You might think that's stupid or silly, but it's just a measurement fact. And it's weird that people don't like using those measurement facts, because would you do that anywhere else? Would you tell your contractor building your new house not to use a tape measure? And what kind of result can you expect by not using tape measures to build your house? I think it's crazy. It's crazy for a couple of reasons, because A, your deficits tell you how people are getting ahead of you. The answers are in there. Now, some of them may work, some of them may not, but I guarantee how you're different than higher ranking competitors is an important part of the puzzle. The other thing that measurement data can do is it can tell you when to stop. Like, how often have you found an SEO that keeps tuning the same 8 things over and over again, more and more and more? You're already number 1 for those 8 things. Like, stop. Like, work on other factors, work on other keywords. And you can't know to stop unless you're measuring. You need to know when you're number 1 in those factors to know to move on from. And so there's a lot of measurement tools out there. And so Quora is just one. I think Quora, in my opinion, is the most authoritative in terms of diversity of things measured. But all these tools have the same pitfall. They tell you how much you need. And SEO tools in general have this pitfall. They all tell you how much. They're great at telling you how much of different things. What they don't tell you is how best. So a tool like Cora will tell you you need, 64 more keywords and LI tags, but that might mean that you need to tune your main navigation menus. That might mean you need to add more products per page. That might mean that your article needs an HTML list. So the how best part is rarely, if at all, ever answered by SEO tools. You still have to think. Any comments on that? I know
I think
Cliff
great.
looks.
That was a great web development conversation right there.
You're still not getting bonus points on that one, Clint. It's still a draw, man. Hitting after the match is not cool. But anyway, yeah, I think the pitfall to Quora is that it does require you to think, and there are too many tools out there that basically promise push button success. They don't deliver it, but they have the promise, and so everybody's always looking for that easy button, and Quora is not the easy button. You have to think about how best to do the thing, and whether or not the particular factor applies to you. Because if you're looking, for example, in local, you're looking at competing websites that are local plumbers, and you're looking at competing websites that are local directories like Yelp and Angie's List and things like that. And you have to know, when you're looking at these factor recommendations, are you trying to look more like one or the other? Tool's not going to tell you that. So it's not easy, but it is definitely a competitive advantage.
I think specifically to his question, how many advanced SEOs overlook it? I think it's way less now than it used to be. And it's basically because of the output and how TED has adapted. When Quora was first released and we first got a hold of it, we got a spreadsheet that was blown out, and there was so much data there that it just kind of overwhelming. Like, what the hell do I do with this? And TED has adapted to the users, and without dumbing down the software, has created a set of reports in there that an advanced SEO has little problem with now, right? And mainly it came out of just so-called SEOs who knew what heading tags or H1s and 2s were, but only in so much as what the WYSIWYG editor in their WordPress thing told them. And you give them that and try to tell them that in HTML perspective, and they look at a Quora report and they just don't know what 90% of that stuff is because they've not taken the time to learn some basic HTML stuff. I was included in that. Quora made me the SEO I am today because I was given this data. I didn't understand 99% of it, so I had to go out there and actually learn it. So, and today, I think the learning curve is significantly less, just because of the way Quora's handled, TED's handled the development of Quora, specifically the styling and the formatting of the reports that come out.
Yeah, and you end up asking yourself questions like, what the hell is a fig caption, and why are all these sites on page one using it? You start to, and that's the learning process of SEO. It goes beyond just the basics, if you will.
Yeah, and exploring outliers is one of the fastest ways to learn SEO. Why is that website using 237 keywords in fig captions? I should probably go over there and take a look. That type of thing, you'll learn very quickly a lot of different techniques and methods for tuning certain types of pages. Let's see, next one. They are still doing pre-recorded and real office hours. Yeah, they're still gonna do them. They're just gonna be less frequent. Made it sound like it was coming back, but careful reading, you realize it isn't. Yeah, who knows what the future will bring? It's really kind of in their hands. Let's see, somebody says John Mueller finally has a mental breakdown. I don't want John Mueller to have a mental breakdown. I actually think he's a really nice person. I just kind of think that the information was packaged in a way that it's easy to complain about. And if you put it in a how search works wrapper, it's much harder to complain about it because then it's much more on point. So I think his topical relevance as SEO advice is poorly tuned.
But he was never going to win. People are always going to complain.
Yeah, I mean, you got to say without saying. That's a hard
Yeah.
line to walk, and everybody's going to disagree with where you put the line.
Well, I can't argue that it's their impression of how their invention works. Like that's just really kind of not open for debate. But I can argue that what they're telling me is good or bad search advice or search optimization advice, because that's much more subjective. Like I don't think a lot of the things he says are going to help you get to the top of your keyword. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think in one context it's easy to complain about, and in the other context I have to try harder to complain. Let's see. I think they are shooting themselves in the foot, as they should use this to improve SEO and stop crappy pages full of rubbish being delivered. I think that John's arms aren't long enough to enact that kind of change at Google. I think he only has a small part to play in a much bigger organization. So I don't know that I would expect his office hours to accomplish that. I think his boss is controlling this. Absolutely. We do know that they have a chain of command for who's allowed to reveal technical details. And as we saw in their own accredited training, they dove for the kill switch by even mentioning keyword density. They had to dive for the button to kill the page. So absolutely, there are overseers who allow and disallow things. People apparently like the topic, so that's cool. How do you use annotation text for linking? All right, so I think this is a Clint question. I would like to know what is meant by annotation text. Do you have any ideas, Clint?
Annotation. It sounds like he's talking about. I use MLA, so it's references, resources, right? So it sounds like that's what he's asking. He or she is asking, and it depends on your market, which format to use. I'm in rehab, so I primarily use MLA, but you can use APA. And what happens is, a good example is go look at healthline.com and how they write their articles out, and then they use the resources at the bottom, creating their citations list. And inside of that, they actually, in their content, so the number one, if you guys have written a research paper, you know what I'm talking about, but here's your sentence, and then you put a number one to link to the reference for that thing. In there, they're actually leveraging that to link down to it, but they're adding keywords inside of it, so that they coincide with what's going on. It's really interesting in how they're doing the SEO stuff, and pulling that all together. So that would be how I would use annotations, assuming that the context of that question, that use of that word, is what they're talking about.
Yeah, there was another question I got earlier in the week, offline, that was about just the URL citation in an article. So not a link, but a mention of the URL as just plain text.
Yeah.
Does that work? Like, I always assumed it didn't, but I haven't tested it personally.
There's a guy in the chat right now that asked me to run that test at the first SEO Rockstars where we met. And him and I actually blew off Stephen Kang's talk and we were writing it down. And I was just looking at it the other day because I still to this day have that. And that was Lee when we first talked. And we were gonna test that concept. Does it even work? And then we were going to test, can you use SEO autopilot if it does work and just you're not building links to your website, right? You're just doing
Implied links, yeah.
Yeah, implied links or unstructured citations is what they're called when you don't have that URL linking to it. So we wanted to see if we could put that together and do it. And to this day, I've not run that test.
Nor have I.
Oh. All right.
So
Well,
I love that we teamed up to crush Ted's hopes and dreams.
well, here's the interesting thing about this is I think, you know, the reason I feel like it probably doesn't work is that if it had legs, a lot more people would be pushing it. A lot of more people would have tried it and they'd said, hey, I'm knocking out of the park with this. I would expect to see it in more courses. And the fact that it's not a new idea, like people have been talking about this for easily more than 10 years, and the fact that it's never blown up leads me to believe it probably doesn't work very well. Now, the fact of the matter is we all keep not testing it, so we actually don't know. So
another iteration of that test is work and get your brand a knowledge panel. Once your brand has a knowledge panel, go out and just say your brand over and over again, right? Because and you don't necessarily have to have a link. It's a known brand. Google knows what that brand is, and more people are talking about it. Does that help you rank higher? I think that's where I would lead in. I would do that before I would bother with unstructured, unlinked URL mentions, you know what I mean? And see if that works better. That to me would be a more useful test to a business owner.
No, I think I've been involved in such a test. Lee, do you remember being involved in such a test?
I remember starting that one, yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, the way that we implemented it was a little bit different, but it's on the same idea.
Well, it sucked. So, yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah, it didn't shoot us up to number one, Ted. Let's just leave it at that.
yeah. So I'm currently putting a user in timeout. Sorry, folks, for the spam.
All right. So while we've got that going, I want to reach out to Terry. I want to reach out to Terry and see how he's scored the fight thus far today, who he has leading on his fight card.
Well, actually, Clint's little ear biting at the end sort of pushed him ahead, I think.
Ooh. So, Ted, you're behind on the judge's card, man.
But let's think, in a YouTube situation where often the people watching can leave comments but can't leave live links, but they could put in just a URL as text. Maybe that has value, maybe it doesn't. Other than people reading it, I mean.
Yeah, and I don't mind being wrong. I actually like it. It's fun to get free, easy learning, and I don't mind that. And I'm always open.
And being
that.
out argued doesn't mean you're necessarily wrong.
Yeah, there's that too. And usually when I'm proven wrong, it's usually by Clint or Lee. They notoriously get me most of the time. But it's okay because we're all after the same thing. We just want to get to the fact of the matter. And if we eventually get there, that's awesome. Then it all serves a purpose. And you got to be open-minded, and you got to try crazy shit. You got to challenge your own beliefs, and you have to do it. It's the only way it works, because otherwise you end up getting in an echo chamber and you never learn anything new. And,
Also just look, the user you put in timeout seems to have a topic they wanted to discuss.
yeah, they sure did. So yeah, I have to wonder, is that a person? Because they seem to target just me, on this show, and they go nuts while I'm on the air, or is it a script that's detecting I'm live somehow and hopping on? I wonder how it works. I don't have any ill will to the spammer, but I wonder how their system works.
I'm guessing that they would be looking at YouTube for things that are live streaming right now, because if they're live streaming right now, you have an audience that could potentially see your spam links and click over to find out about their particular topic.
Yeah. It's really weird. And they come back every week. Like I have to delete their comments every single episode.
Scheduled shows are probably a great opportunity.
Yep. Let's see. Another question. Is there any hard evidence about whether links higher up on a page carry more weight, in particular, the first link on a page's main content? Well, the first thing I want to say about this is if that is a thing, it's not so important that it's the most important thing. I think it's a minor thing if it's a thing at all. And the reason I feel it's a minor thing is, going back 20 years, I've played with 100% exact match footer links. I built a career out of it, a very successful career about working in page footers. And all the way up to recently, to this year, I've been ranking websites using those same footer techniques and playing SEO games in the footer. And so even as recently as Lee's course and participating in the course, I ranked pages to #1 in Google using just SEO in the footer. So if that is a thing, it's not so important that it's the most important thing. It's not. But is there some tested evidence, hard evidence, that it could matter? There is some evidence, but it's not conclusive. So the evidence is that there appears to be a cliff, a point in your HTML source where when you go below that, the ranking benefits of keyword stuffing fall off sharply. And we call that the keyword density cliff. And it's at about 30 kilobytes in a simple indexing context. So not a rendered indexing, but the simple, where Google just gets the HTML, processes you quickly. It appears to be the first 30 kilobytes of the page is where keyword stuffing matters. Once Google renders the page, we technically don't know if that cliff still holds up. It might go away after you've had your rendered indexing phase. We haven't tested that far. What we found, though, is that the theme that you're picking in WordPress might be important at a minor level, but it's not insurmountable. It's not something where if your theme pushes your main content below 30 kilobytes, you're screwed. No, it seems to be a minor advantage. You can overcome it in other areas. More relevancy, more factor diversity, more backlinks off page. So it's not insurmountable. So it appears to be at best a minor advantage, if it's an advantage at all. What do you think, Clint?
We haven't tested SIA. It's tested in content versus sidebar versus footer, and in content all we won. But we've never, as far as I can remember, we've never tested in level of power based off of where in your page. We've never tested that. I can't see that that would be an issue, right? So, I mean, this has really come up because there's a lot of people that are looking at the Google patents, and there's one of them where it says the value of the link is more important based off of the likelihood of it being clicked. And you can kind of put that together with if it's higher on the page, it stands out more prominently and it's more likely to be clicked. So that link has more value than the one in the third paragraph that's just an anchor text. And that's an interpretation of that particular algorithm. I know a lot of people that live and die by that concept, but not one of those people have said, I've actually tested it, one against the other, and it came out definitively to be the more powerful thing, right? So it's certainly worth testing. I also think that even though the test would only be relevant to the website that you tested it on, because maybe your test, the power of your website is less. So maybe having a link on one versus another, you're messing with link power, and you're never going to know that. So, I mean, you can have one good target domain, and your 3 test sites that you're sending links from in various positions all have different link power according to the algorithm. And that could be the link power that could be your interpretation. You're looking at it and like, oh, I have the link in the bottom and not rank the one where the link is in the top. There go the link in the bottom. It could be that just that one particular site had better authority in Google than the other site, and that's what gave you that result versus the other. So, I mean, we did that test together after you talked about the footer link stuff, and I was like, yeah, right. And you're all right, hold my beer. So we built that on-page SEO thing, and you gave me 15,000 footer links from like 5 domains, and we ranked in what was it, position 15 with just footer links for on-page SEO. So I mean it's I think at that stage, placement of your URLs and how much power those are going to get, I think you're kind of wasting your time. Just get the backlink at this point.
Yeah, link's a link.
Yep.
They're hard enough to get that you don't need to be saying no. And anything that's of the quality of an average internet backlink, well, that's what the entire web is built on. You take any high page rank website, and their link portfolio is filled with average internet backlinks. And the average quality of an average internet backlink is very, very low. And so this whole notion of maintaining a high quality backlink profile, that's a game that small websites play. You can't possibly scale with it. And buying links, likewise, you can't pay $200 a backlink and get to PR7. You're investing hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. The numbers just don't work. So your links need to get closer and closer to free in order to keep climbing the ladder.
I will say that if you're buying links from people that talk about homepage links, typically what those are is a homepage is a blog roll. And if you don't put your links in the first paragraph, it never gets on the homepage. So you never get a homepage link. So that would be the only time where I would consider, where is my URL in that piece of content?
Yeah, he's asking because people want to be the first link on the page. Well, if they visually want to be that, you can work that out with CSS and have it be the last thing in the text. And that's the problem, is that once you render, the position in the document and the position on the screen aren't necessarily going to be in agreement.
Yeah.
And
sounds to me like he's a seller. I would just give it to him. You're not. It's not hurting them. It's not helping them. Just whatever, appease them and let them have it.
Yeah. Not a big deal in my opinion either.
Nope.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have for today. So I want to thank everyone. And yeah, I love that we had a little bit of debate today. Some really great points came up.
It's nice.
And
'Cause
so
if we get a bunch of new subscribers, I'll make sure that I'll poke both Ted and Clint on the weekly and keep this going.
all right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week. And take care.